Good morning. House Democrats had a productive meeting this morning. I'm operating without a safety net of the vice chair, who is on a plane in transit, thanks to weather and travel issues that I think a lot of members are experiencing this week. I just wanted to reiterate that House Democrats are in lockstep that we need to avoid a government shutdown, which would be a disaster for our economy and a disaster for hardworking American families. Last week, extreme Republicans in the House spent the better part of a week fighting amongst themselves just because they chose to prioritize baseless impeachments and censures and expulsion votes over getting things done. They are just fundamentally incapable of governing. We're urging our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to work with us on a full-year government funding bill that is free from policy changes like restricting abortion access. Nothing can pass the House of Representatives without Democratic caucus votes. And House Democrats will not vote for the kind of poison pill policy changes that we saw during the appropriations process. We're grateful to Chairwoman Rosa DeLauro for her work, and also grateful to Leader Jeffries for holding the line on these policy riders in the negotiations with our colleagues across the aisle. With that, happy to answer any questions. Ryan.
Mr. Aguilar, some of your colleagues have floated the idea that if Speaker Johnson finds himself in another motion to vacate situation, that they might be willing to support him in his speakership to prevent some of the chaos that we saw with Speaker McCarthy. Is that a view that you share? Is there any benefit to this idea of isolating the conservatives that threaten this from time to time so that governing can continue through the rest of the year?
Well, I think it's an important point because we want this place to work. We want to govern. And that's what House Democrats want. That's what we want out of a speaker, by the way. And if the prior speaker would have been focused on governing, then we might not be in this position. But we want to see this speaker work to govern. But we have seen, just like last week and on other issues, he chooses to listen to the most extreme voices in his conference. And if you're going to listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene on policy, then we're probably going to have some disagreements. So if he's willing to isolate some of the most extreme voices in his conference to work, then I think we can have a somewhat productive year and at least avoid the cliffs that we have and the government funding deadlines. But if he's willing to listen to the most extreme voices in his conference, then that's another story. The House Democratic Caucus has not had any of these discussions. These are all hypotheticals, at this point. But I do want to reiterate that we want to make this place work. So to the extent we can find partners that will help do that, and a reminder that the continuing resolution, I assume this week, that we're going to vote on, that will need a significant majority of the House Democratic Caucus, we will put up the votes for that, just as we have in the past, to avoid the debt limit, to avoid government shutdown previously with continuing resolutions. House Democrats are going to put up the votes to govern. Chad?
What's it like, though, you talk about putting up these votes on the debt ceiling and some of these other bills here, when you're in the minority and they have a very small majority, just a couple of seats here, that Democrats time and time again are providing the votes on these must-do bills. I mean, describe what that's like over and over again, where you guys deliver the goods.
Well, we want to govern, and I think that's what we always come back to is we don't mind this. We know that they are a dysfunctional majority. We know that they do not have actual votes to govern. The only thing that binds them together are some of the issues that you're seeing this week. Opposing women's reproductive freedom, opposing abortion care, supporting censures, impeachments. Those are the only things that bind Republicans together. So of course, every week they're going to bring those issues up. It is truly the only thing that can get them 218 votes on any given week. Now, when it comes to governing and actually passing policy bills, the House Democratic Caucus, we came here, we were elected to make our communities better and to advance and to make progress on so many significant issues. So of course we know that that's going to mean compromise and discussion, and we don't mind putting up votes to keep government funded and to keep government open. We feel that that's our responsibility, our mandate, our charge, and our duty.
But you hear from some of your members saying, why are we continually, even though it might be the right thing to do on the debt ceiling or government funding, saying, why do we have to bail them out? I mean, is there ever any pushback, people saying, let them finally figure this out?
No, I think that there's pushback when we aren't part of the negotiation process and we're asked to put up a significant number of votes. And I think that's why House Democrats want to be at the table. If you're going to ask us to help fund government, then this is truly going to have to be, Washington words here, four corners discussions on appropriations bills, on tax policy bills, on the things that could actually move and have success. House Democrats deserve to be at the table because we're providing votes to make these policies happen. Max?
This morning we saw yourself and Jeffries and Whip Clark endorse Summer Lee in Pennsylvania. Can we expect other endorsements of progressive incumbents who are facing challenges from APAC-funded primary opponents?
I don't think it should be a surprise. House Democratic leaders support House Democratic member. I don't think there's much news there, but I think from our perspective, Summer Lee is a thoughtful member. She's someone who has the back of working families in Pittsburgh. Someone who has the support of unions and working families in her region, and I think that's something that we'll continue to support. And to the extent that we can be helpful with members, that's what leadership is here for. So I look forward to helping. Nick?
Given that the CR vote is coming up this week and that Speaker Johnson had previously agreed to the FRA top lines, do you have confidence in him to keep his word as you guys negotiate the rest of this appropriations package?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this town, a word's person is their bond, and but unfortunately, sometimes we do see that erodes. We saw that with the last speaker, but I think we will always hold out hope that the agreement is the agreement, and that we will draw up these numbers to the FRA, to the Fiscal Responsibility Act budget numbers that we've all agreed to. But now comes the hard work. Now the appropriators have to work to set these top line numbers in each bill, and we have to make sure that Republicans don't continue to want to tank our appropriations process by supporting riders that are anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ. I mean, those are the types of things that will hurt this process and delay the process and push us closer to a shutdown. But we hold out hope, and we hope that the Speaker's word means something, and that we will have a fair appropriations process, and that the committees will do their work. That's what is ahead of us, and that's what we're hoping for. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman. Leader Jeffries will represent House Democrats at the White House today, and the other three congressional leaders will talk about Ukraine and the National Security Supplemental. House Republicans obviously have tied border talks to Ukraine funding, but over the weekend, House Republican leadership mentioned that a deal is not to be had until hypothetical Donald Trump's second term. Can you just speak about kind of that moving of the goalposts of the whole point of these Senate negotiations is because House Republicans demanded that border talks be connected to Ukraine funds, but now it seems as though they're not interested anymore. What does that do for you all in terms of negotiating these deals?
Yeah, and you've seen senators go on the record and to try to implore their House colleagues to keep an open mind. I think it proves what we talked about earlier, which is there is a significant group within the House Republican Conference who will never get to yes on these issues. They will never get to yes on anything immigration related. They will never get to yes on an appropriations process that is bipartisan. They just refuse to govern. And so I do think that they are often moving the goalposts on these issues, but it is very clear for us that Leader Jeffries will represent House Democrats at the White House. He will convey our positions, and to the extent our votes are needed, he will convey what is necessary and important for us to see. We know that the national security imperatives are important. We know funding for Ukraine, funding for humanitarian assistance in Israel is important. Military aid to Israel, Indo-Pacific priorities are top of mind and important. We also know that the National Security Supplemental contains $2.3 billion for ICE, $5 billion, over $5 billion for Customs and Border Patrol. So if Republicans were serious about addressing issues at our southern border, that would be a fair place to start, and I think that's what the president is going to implore the legislative leaders to do.
You mentioned immigration. How serious is the Biden administration in securing the border? Because, I mean, the argument can be made that they're failing the American people by not securing the border right now.
Oh, we believe in rules. We believe in law and order. We believe in order at the border. Like I said, if Republicans were serious about this, they would support $2.3 billion in ICE funding, $5 additional billion in Customs and Border Patrol. We're not going to fix this by building walls. We're going to fix this through broader use of technology, manpower, immigration judges, humanitarian assistance, aid to local communities who are dealing with the frontline impacts. That's how we deal with this, but it has to be done in a comprehensive way. And unfortunately, as you've heard recently, Speaker Johnson doesn't believe in anything comprehensive when it comes to the border immigration.
And a follow-up on that, we're going to have another impeachment hearing into Secretary Mayorkas. Do you have confidence in the secretary to do his job?
I do, but I just think it's so funny that we have the Senate negotiating with Secretary Mayorkas on border solutions in one chamber, and then in this chamber they're bringing him up for impeachment for not doing his job. So I just think that that side by side isn't lost on any of us who are actually paying attention. But again, we come back to the House. This is who the House Republican Conference is. They believe in censures, impeachments. That's what brings them together. It is truly the only thing that brings them together. And the committees feel that they need to do this because it's one of the few things within the committee that they have agreement on. And if you can't pass policy bills, then they're going to continue to go down this parade. Merrick Garland, Secretary Mayorkas. I mean, just name the cabinet secretary and plug in a month, and that's probably what the agenda is going to be on the House Republican Conference side.
Talking about the tax package or the tax deal that got announced yesterday, I'm just curious about the sense within your caucus on support for that, in particular the child tax credit. Is some expansion better than no expansion until 2025?
Yeah, we're gonna take the lead of some of our leaders within the House Democratic Caucus when it comes to the child tax credit. We believe in some of the business provisions to create jobs and to support our national economy and our local economy. Some of those provisions are incredibly important. But what we hold, in the highest regard is the child tax credit. Leaders like Rosa DeLauro have been so passionate on these issues. Susan DelBene, Richie Torres have been leading House Democratic efforts on this child tax credit. But what we hold as the bar is the prior child tax credit that was enacted. 2.1 million children affected, lifted out of poverty just by that child tax credit. So that's the bar by which we're going to judge things. And now we'll see what the language says. We'll talk to Richie Neal, Rosa DeLauro, our leaders on this issue. But that becomes the baseline by which we judge things. Is it going to make things better in reducing childhood poverty, or is it going to make things worse? Those are the things that we're concerned about. We know that negotiations are important. We know compromise. Compromise is not a four-letter word to the House Democratic Caucus, but that's what we hold is our policy objectives, is lifting children out of poverty. That's what brings us together, and that's what we'll judge this policy on. Back.
I mean, just following up on that, at this point, it seems clear that the tax package that's been proposed would do more than what's currently being done for children in poverty, but it's not going to come anywhere near the level that, when parents were, getting checks. And so I guess I'm wondering, is that enough? Is it enough to sort of do more
Well, again, we'll talk to our leaders on this issue. Richie Neal will continue to engage and keep us updated. We'll heed the advice of Rosa DeLauro and Susan Delbene and Richie Torres and others who've been taking a lead in the Ways and Means Committee on this issue. Those are going to be the important things. But like I said, our goal, our objective is to lift children out of poverty. We're going to judge it by that goal and what we did in 2021, and then we'll have to make some decisions. Thank you so much.